In late 2012, Salvador Alvarez, a 36-year-old fisherman, went out a routine 2-day fishing trip.
Estamos cerca de los Estados Unidos.
He brought a young assistant, a 22-year-old named Ezequiel Ciardaba. They never came back. A sudden, violent storm knocked out their motor, electronics, and food supply. They were swept out into the deep Pacific Ocean in a 25-foot fiberglass boat without a roof. For the next 138 days, Alvarenga drifted. He survived by grabbing sea turtles from the water, catching rain in plastic bottles, and catching birds that perched on his boat. Tragically, after 4 months, young Ezequiel passed away from starvation and illness, leaving Alvarenga completely alone in a blue desert. Then, on January 30, 2014, the boat washed ashore on a remote atoll in the Marshall Islands. Alvarenga stumbled out onto the sand haggard, bearded, swollen, but alive. He had drifted over 8,000 miles. It was the longest solo survival at sea in recorded history. He became an overnight sensation. The media called him the real-life Martian. But then, the cameras packed up. The world moved on. The silence didn't last long. But when it was broken, it wasn't with praise. It was with suspicion. When Alvarenga first stepped off the boat in the Marshall Islands, the media noticed something. He was heavily swollen, but he wasn't as emaciated as people expected a man who had starved for 14 months to be. Skeptics emerged immediately. How could a fiberglass boat survive over a year of Pacific storms without flipping over? How could he survive without getting scurvy? Even the Mexican authorities and oceanographers were initially skeptical. Critics claimed he had been hiding somewhere, that the whole thing was a massive publicity stunt. To prove his innocence, Alvarenga did something few people ever do. He agreed to take a polygraph test administered by a top lie detection expert. He sat in a room, hooked up to the wires, and answered every agonizing question about the hunger, the madness, the hallucinations of his mother's food, and the moment his friend died. The test confirmed he was telling the absolute truth. Oceanographers later mapped the Pacific currents and proved that the drift path perfectly matched his timeline. He was vindicated, but the aftermath was just beginning. When Alvarenga finally returned to his home country of El Salvador to reunite with his estranged family and daughter, he thought his nightmare was over. He was wrong. In 2015, a year after his rescue, the family of Ezequiel Ciardaba, the young man who had died on the boat, filed a $1 million lawsuit against Alvarenga. They didn't just sue him for negligence. They made a horrifying accusation. They claimed that Alvarenga didn't just survive on turtle blood and raw birds. They claimed he had cannibalized their son to stay alive. The media erupted again. Alvarenga was crushed. He had spent months talking to the deceased boy's body out of pure loneliness before finally burying him at sea. And now he was being branded a monster. Alvarenga's defense was simple. The boy had made him promise not to eat him if he died. Alvarenga kept that promise, throwing his remains into the ocean. The lawsuit dragged on, draining what little money Alvarenga had made from a book deal about his survival. The public's perception was ruined. To this day, many still believe the dark rumors over the proven facts. So, where is the real-life Martian today? Alvarenga didn't become rich. After legal fees, his book royalties were modest. He retreated completely from the public eye. Today, he lives a quiet, isolated life in a small, remote village in El Salvador. But the ocean didn't just take 14 months of his life. It took his peace. He developed a severe, paralyzing fear of the water. The man who spent his entire youth as a master fisherman can no longer bear to be near the sea. He suffers from severe PTSD, insomnia, and a constant, phantom feeling of a rocking boat. He lives inland now, far from the crashing waves. He survived the longest drift in human history, only to be trapped by the very ocean he escaped. 438 days at sea. But for Salvador Alvarenga, the drift has never truly ended.